Today is September 19th, 2014. My name is Juliana Nykolaiszyn. Also with me is Tanya Finchum. We're at the Oklahoma Oral History Research Program at the OSU Library. And today we're interviewing Royce and Joyce Bender as part of the Oklahoma Centennial Farm Families Oral History Project. We'll be talking about Bender Farms today. Thank you so much for being with us.
Okay, good.
Well,
Glad to be here. Glad you're here.
Glad we're here too. I'd like to start by having you tell me how your family came to Oklahoma, came to settle that land.
Well, the four brothers left Kiowa, Kansas in two spring wagons during the run, which is what, 121 years, I think now. And some people thought they were Sooners because they got four quarters together out there, but some of my aunts definitely denied that. And they homesteaded in Section 1 and Section 12. And also my grandmother, her father, Lewis Helmick, homesteaded in Section 1, just across the road from each other. And that is 4.5 miles west of Cherokee. We used to call it Fifth Street all the time, but now it's Greer Road. And there, it was all tall prairie grass at the time, I think. And they went back to Kiowa, Kansas to get some of their lumber to build anything out of. I think originally they had the dugout west of the buildings. And then later they built a little one-room house way out in the middle of the section almost. They always told me there was, what do you call them, gypsies or so. Later in life they'd come in there and steal their chickens or anything they could get a hold of. And so they went way out, and they didn't farm at all. They didn't with horses or mules. My granddad didn't believe in farming with horses at all. He used mules. And dug a hand-dug well, which I still use it, and even there's 4 hand-dug wells, but we still use 2 of them now to water our cattle with, and they're approximately 30 feet deep and only maybe 12 feet to water there, and it was always good water. I don't know, later on he added nicer home. When the family got bigger, they built on sections of these houses a lot of times. And in 1918, he added on there and had water and a bathtub, which I have the old bathtub lavatory out at the farm, and had tile floor in part of that house and a pantry. It's pretty modern. And in 29 and 30, a man by the name of Zenith put a gas line from Alva to Cherokee over there, and they have natural gas and a Cervell refrigerator back in the 30s or so, early 30s. Of course, I'm old enough to remember some of the dust bowls we had here. My granddad, after a couple of brothers died, my great-grandfather moved here from Kansas, and he was quite wealthy because I have records in here. My sister kept everything, or my dad, granddad. I have papers and checks, except when my sister died, I burned a bunch of my stuff I wanted to keep, such as the 1915 Sandusky tractor and several little walls. And my granddad had a 1912 Cadillac and a 1915 Cadillac. They seemed to have some money. Most all of his children are college graduates. My dad, of course, was the oldest of the first. Well, he had a younger sister who's lived 2 days, born in 97, dad 98, and on down the line. Some of the foundation from the house was the soft rocks they hauled in from west of Cherokee, or west of Alva out here in the hills. And I heard my granddad hauled a bunch there for the Enterprise School. You know, there's schoolhouse every 3 miles out here. Short Springs. You came by still over here by Ashley, standing, and they have one up here at the college, I mean at the museum. They moved in. I don't know when, I have the original copy of when he staked his claim and went to the land office in Alva. The original copy in there. Over here on the highway, they got across the country, and out here by Ampride or so, that canyon there, they said they couldn't cross it so deep, they had to go down there to Saltport River to get into Alva. I don't know. Things just happened, I guess. I started mostly farming, well, I grew up out there, yeah, first tractor I ran was a 33 ounce Chalmers, and we had a 37 and 41, and we got into D. John Deere's and Internationals, and Granddad had JIK's thrash machine, and had crews, and you know, they hauled the wheat to town with wagons and teams, or maybe pickups, cars pulled wagons, or horses at first. I don't know what to tell you. Yeah, a lot of history.
Well, let's back up a little bit and talk about how the land progressed through your family. So
how I acquired it?
Right.
Well, I ended up having to buy a bunch of aunts and cousins out, and my dad was supposed to receive that because his brother got another quarter over in Section 1. That's the whole history. And one aunt gave my uncle her share, but I don't know, when did we start buying some of that? In the 60s, I guess.
I think so.
And I bought a quarter or an 80 next to it in Section 12. Then we bought that quarter there, and we had an 80 down here in Woods County. And my dad's aunt and uncle in Section 1, after my great-granddad died, he gave, willed his two daughters and my granddad land there. And my granddad bought out one of his sisters, and the other one lived in Chicago and sued him to get that other 80, the price. So I don't know why I ended up buying the aunts and cousins out, and when my wife started teaching school at Cherokee, we were going to build there, but we built a new house in Cherokee at the time. I don't know. I just remember the old blacksmith shop as a kid. I'd go out there and fire up the forge and hammer around on stuff and played on those old tractors and everything else. They had several that Granddad never got rid of the old tractors and kept Rumblies, 2 or 3 of those there, and a Sandusky. And I don't know, after I ended up getting some of that land, I had 3 of those Alice Chalmers tractors at one time, and I wasn't in the old tractor pool, so, and I had enough newer machinery I didn't want to, so I sold all 3 of those. And a lot of junk to clean up, especially on Section 1 there is when I kind of acquired it. There was 13 binders and about that many combines, and just junk you had to haul off, and or scrap metal, I guess.
So your grandfather William was the one who came from Kiowa to settle the land?
Yes,
Okay.
and his 3 brothers.
And his 3 brothers.
4 quarters.
And William had how many children?
Well, there's 5 daughters, or 6, wasn't it?
6.
Yeah, 6.
Okay. And William, was he primarily a farmer, or did he work off the farm?
Back in those days, I don't know how they was able to keep him. Of course, it's supposed to prove up on 5 years. But undoubtedly, they kept a brother or 2 there most of the time. And they could leave. No, he went up here in Kansas and worked. He was a foreman of a railroad for a while. was a big man, 6'4", 5", and back in those days, if you probably been around the old railroads, the rails are small, short and smaller rails, and they had tied them together with pieces in there. And I heard at one time, you know, you probably saw the movies where if you guys pick up these rails and carry them, I heard at one time he could lift one of those rails, which I don't know. But they were big man. I'm the run of the family. My side, I got had sisters, a sister and another sister bigger than I am. Yeah. I don't know.
So on his 160, what were some of the early structures he started building?
Well, after they moved up towards the road and got their dugout, maybe the well dug there, probably the smallest little building there was just a small one. Probably they put corn in. And I remember they had a grinder out there with a horse or mule or whether they went in a circle to grind their own corn. Then they built some bigger granaries, pictures in this house up here, and had a lean-to on each side. One of them there, they had little windows out there and extensions inside there, and these old horse collars were hanging on the wall in there till they finally fell down. Got a cat tromped on by cattle, I guess. But probably the first two buildings were granaries, or the first three buildings, and lean-to or two, maybe park cattle in or some machinery in. And the next bigger building there was, I'm not sure that picture of it, of the Goofy Barn, we called it later, when the daughter-in-laws painted Goofy on the side of it. It was built in 1916, machinery shed. And then in 24, another barn was built, and it's still out there. This was quite a landmark for this. And on the side of that building, we painted it. The next daughter-in-law painted that on there. And is there another picture of that? I think they had another one in there. Yeah, that's another one. But I did just tear that down well. It was getting pretty rickety about the fall.
That became a landmark for
Yeah, that was everybody.
lots of people.
Yeah.
What were some of the early crops William worked on?
Well, I think they grew their own corn for their cattle, mule feed, and I'm sure they had oats and wheat. The elevator, a small elevator, was just a mile and a half east of there. There wasn't, of course, any Cherokee there, so my granddad did all the banking in Ingersoll. You came through there, there's not much there anymore. There was a lot of saloons and banks in Ingersoll in the old days. And I think they kind of had a little squabble between Ingersoll and Cherokee. After Cherokee came in, they got the railroads more into Cherokee, and it was built kind of a flood area. It's had a lot of flooding, a lot of problems. And the post office was there at Auburn. There was a church and a cemetery still there, and a post office there at Auburn. It's from the farm was at the 5 Mile corner, west first corner, and 2 miles south there, where they did their post office and all. What's more questions?
Do you know much about William's wife?
Other than she was Rosella Elmick, the oldest child. And when her mother and father passed away, on my abstract to that over there, was that my granddad was appointed guardian. They had to sell the land, and my granddad already had a couple of kids of his own, and there's about 8 of those. So they were sent to his grandmother's brothers and sisters all but an orphanage in Wichita.
Which I find unusual, because they were only a few miles from the Carmen home. And it seems like they would have gone there, but they didn't. I've done quite a bit of research on the Carmen home, and it seems strange that they went to Wichita, but yet the family seemed drawn to Wichita more. Probably Enid was almost non-existent at that time, because his father went to the university, at Friends University in Wichita, and one of his sisters went there to the hospital to become a nurse. So I guess it was just because Enid was not as developed as Wichita was at the time.
At one time, there was a lot of pictures of thrash machine, combines, tractors and everything, and I don't know, probably most of them were taken here in town where my dad lived, and the younger sister, I don't know what happened to them all, but it sounded like she gave them all away or didn't know what to do with stuff. And then there was a fire there in the house, and I think it did burn a few things too. The house is still there because it didn't burn the house. It had a salt cement floor over the top, so it didn't burn the house.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your father. Did he grow up on the farm?
Yes.
And did he ever tell you about any of his early chores on the farm, or what he had to do?
Well, I know when he was over there in Section 1, running the Lister Ridge Buster, he had a team runaway, and they went around section back at home with the team went back home there across the road more or less, and he walked home and got home. My grandmother looked at him. He had blood running out of his shoe or boot that the Lister Ridge had disc on it to fill the Lister ridges in, and he had a pretty bad cut. He came over to Northwestern to go to school, we thought, and the president of the university offered him a drink. My dad was a teetotaler, so he went to French University, which the Quakers didn't believe too much in drinking. And he finished his classes at Horse Man. That was Northwestern had a high school there for a while. And but here he got his degree out of French University, started teaching in school in 1924. And my mother got married in 24. He bought a house there at 824 Church Street that I was born in, and my older brother and sister. We lived for a $20 bill. I don't know, he has sold that house not very many years ago. Built a new one up on the highway and rented that out for years. He couldn't cash his Oklahoma teacher's warrants in 1929. The state was broke. He banked it out. Central National, they wouldn't even loan him any money on his money warrants. He went up to Alva State, and they did loan him some money, part of it on interest, you know. And so at one time he was 45th Division, the company commander, as I think a first lieutenant. Then he went to Fort Mammoth Signal Corps School. He and his brother had ham radio operator's license in 1918, ham radios. He was a math major in science, and they made and built their own Delco Remy 32-volt system out the farm, and pretty well built their own ham radio. I heard they was able to talk to Cuba on a 5-watt unit, and he was taken in the 45th when they activated it in 1940. But he had a wife, 4 kids at home. They let him out. But Ben's, you're an officer. They pulled him back in before Pearl Harbor. And he was home on leave when Roosevelt came on, told us about the Pearl Harbor bombing. I was sitting there about 10 years old, wasn't it? 9, 10. On an old Zenith radio, we heard that, and the next day, which like I said, I burnt some stuff I shouldn't have. I had a telegram the next day after that to report back to camp. And he stationed mostly, or for a while, at Fort Bliss, Texas, and finished up his pretty well. Well, he didn't finish up there because he did go over to Germany, but he was a signal supply officer. He made captain then, retired major later. He was cleared by the FBI to cold decode messages out of Washington, and I got to go down there and live a summer, a time or two in the barracks with him, and boy, I was treated pretty nice. All these non-coms out there would come in and see a Coke machine back there and say, "Kid, we'll buy you a Coke if you go get us one," you know. But you couldn't drink the water at camp food then. And he was chewed out by Patton once. I heard that the telephones weren't working. And my dad had nothing to do with telephones, just strictly radios. They're good radios they had then, put the batteries in, they didn't work too good either. And then I know one time, I think the commander over him wanted to get rid of him. I don't know why, but anyway, I think a full bird colonel came in there and told him, let's take a walk down the railroad track, and they did. And next day, the other guy was shipped out. And he went over to Germany a while, at Hanau, Germany, and it was pretty well after the war ended, though. And sent him out on some guard duty. They had to guard all the water supply. They was afraid the Germans might poison the soldiers there. And I was there at Camp Hood when he was officer of the day, your old D. Of course, you had to wear your 45, and he could set his shoes outside his room, and black Native American, not Native American, you're African American, would polish your shoes and take care of everything. You'd be an officer. It was still segregated then pretty well, and I noticed once he said he went and you had a head count all of them, and they said a lot of these black soldiers had their heads completely covered up. Even in the summer it was hot, you had to lift the blanket off to make sure they was there, I guess, even. But I don't know, it's just some stories about my dad, I guess.
Well, when he came back from the war, did he continue teaching, or did he move back to the farm?
No, he put in his own radio television show.
Okay.
And I had some cousins and uncles did mechanic work there in it. The building's still up here. My older brother and I built all the cement blocks for that building, 40 by 60 building, on one block mold. And then I helped build a couple of houses for my sister, brother-in-law, and my dad's there. I don't know, that's why I'm too old and crippled now. I worked too much when I was a kid.
Well, what was going on the farm during the war and after?
Well, I remember a lot of pigs and chickens, and I was able to, some of the land there, they couldn't farm it all. They rented some out to other people because you just couldn't, with the machinery and things you had back there, the mules before, you just couldn't farm it. I even broke out some of it there because they just couldn't farm it all with the, till you get into the better, newer machinery, tractors, a lot of difference from even when I started running an old dirt, no air-conditioned cab tractor and get into a four-wheel drive. I remember plowing with a little 314 plow that load the ground, choke up the straw. Maybe you'd sit on the plow and try to kick the straw out, and then you get into four-wheel drive tractors and 30-foot disc and chisels when you was using a little plow wasn't 5 foot big, and take you all day. I know you had a lot more help. You hired help, and you maybe run a combine during the daytime and unhook the tractor and plow at night. I know we had one tractor that burnt that carried their gasoline out in the 5 gallons or 10-gallon cream cans, funnel poured in, and maybe it spilled on the exhaust and burned something up or so. A lot of changes. You got something to say? You grew up on a farm over here by Burlington. Said you'd never marry a farmer. You always had your cottage trucks with your milk and maybe drank the cream separator and
So when you were growing up, did you live on the farm or did you live in town?
I lived there in town, but we went to the farm every summer, probably from the day of school out through into school start.
So as a little boy, what were some of your chores on the farm when school was out?
I didn't do a whole lot else.
I think you walked a mile up the road to go swimming in the tank.
Yeah, a neighbor out there, Chub Wessels, has passed away here recently. And they had a big cement tank. And I was kind of the mom and dad's pet of the family, I guess. I played a lot. Later though, we had a cow that's usually milked, and even that brought the cow in the winter in town when you could have cows and chickens in Alva up till, through into almost 60s. We had a cow in town. I milked the cow quite a bit. We had our own chickens, fryers. It was good to have a fresh fried chicken and corn on the cob and mashed potatoes almost every day for dinner.
Whose job was it to kill the chicken?
My mother.
How did she do it?
With a big old butcher knife.
Did she have a technique?
I don't know. She'd put it down, put her foot on the legs and pull the head up and whack.
My mother did that differently. She would, she put the chicken down, and then she'd put a board over the chicken's neck and stand on it, and then just pull the head off.
That's what we did our rabbits. I did a lot of hunting.
And I hated those chickens. That scared me to death when the chicken would bounce around, and afterwards, so I'd go running away. I couldn't stand that.
I think my granddad was kind of the hunter of the family. Another story is they were put fences around the old boulevard post, which some of those put in 100 years ago or more than 100 years ago are still out there. Everything was petition fenced, 40 acres and 20 acres. And I remember a time there it had the old stationary hay baler, and they had the old hay rakes. I rode on the hay rake, dump rake. And then they had their buckboards, the Model Ts or Model As, shoved up there to the baler. Then they'd pitch the hay and alfalfa into the baler. Then the guys have set on the side of there and put the wire in and tie them. And I remember dragging the bales back to the baler and trying to stack them or put them on a wagon. It wasn't too old. I was probably 4th grade, 9 years old when I plowed with myself on a tractor while I was over there in another field, maybe cutting wheat or so.
So what year were you born?
31.
Okay. During the Depression? Or?
Oh yes, I can remember the Dust Bowls. And we were invited out to Ken's Burns at Panhandle State to see that original film when he was out there and talked to several of the people he interviewed or had there. Had a big banquet there at the time. Of course, now he's got all this Roosevelts on public system now. I enjoyed watching Teddy Roosevelt much more so than
Franklin?
Franklin.
It's not over yet.
No, not yet.
The best is yet to come.
So while your dad was in the military, what was your mother doing?
She went down to Camp Hood some, and we moved down to Fort Bliss for a while one winter. But she was pretty well keeping care of things. My older brother and my uncle did the farming then. Of course, back then you didn't have antifreeze to put in the tractors and things. We'd have to, in the winter, drilling wheat, you had to drain the radiator every night or it'd freeze, and the next morning you had to put water back in the tractors or freeze it, break the block or radiator. My older brother was old enough that he helped do a lot of the farming, which I did some too, but not as much as my older brother. We pretty well stayed in Alva while he was away, managing the farm and doing things. And I know once where my dad put me on the train out of Kilgore, Texas. I think I was about 14, sent me home, and I could only make it to Guthrie on that train, and my depot agent telegrammed my mother. She sent back, told the depot agent to find me a room for the night. And the train then I think came on up to Cherokee, and you know, you had your gasoline stamps. I think she had to borrow some of those, and maybe you blow out a tire or two. You couldn't even buy hard tires. And at school we had our little coupons where you'd take some money or something in to help the war effort. I don't know. Just stayed at home, I guess, and raised the kids and spanked me. 'Cause I was ornery.
I couldn't tell.
Had a lot of yardsticks broke on me.
You get into quite a bit of mischief?
Oh yeah, yeah. Did school in the 4th grade, went out there to sand pits and about drowned if another kid hadn't pulled me out. And of course, later in life, I had my Harley, and you know, we have an older son. He's a manager of National Fish Hatchery in Wyoming, and Hunt. He was just hunting last week, I think. He's got pictures out here. He's got every animal there is about hanging on 2 different houses, from his mounted goat to his elks to his antelope to everything. I don't know. And our younger son that farms, we had a terrible accident in April. They put in a new eye socket, a new jawbone. He still has to have the surgery. Cut the top of your head open, pull your face down, and put in a new eye socket and stuff. He's getting along fine, except he doesn't have sight in his one eye. And he's a big boy, 6'4" or 5.
An unusual thing, I don't know whether it had anything to do with more with the genes or with something about their living conditions, but of the 7 children, only the oldest 2 escaped cancer. Their mother had cancer, and all of the younger ones did too. Just, you know, seems really strange that, and it could well be the genes, but the oldest child and the youngest were male. The ones in between were all women, and they all had breast cancer, except this second, the oldest daughter didn't, but the others all experienced it
Well,
in one way or
well,
another.
that's right.
Most of them died from it, but one went ahead and had the surgery and both breasts removed just to avoid having it.
Well, my Uncle Wayne, he had brain tumor.
Mm.
Yeah. And he wasn't the youngest, first was the youngest.
Were they using pesticides that early that would have?
Not anything that I know of. WD,
It
or 2,4-D
probably
didn't
the
come
genes,
around till
but,
sometime Vietnam era, didn't it? We're not, there's hardly any 2,4-D or 2,4-DT used now. We're using a lot of Roundup because we're no-till farming. Changes that, have one neighbor over there that been in it probably 13, 14 years, been real successful. We've only been in about 4.
How'd you make the decision to go to no-till?
I think probably influenced a lot by this neighbor. You, if you'd been here last week or week before, you wouldn't, they closed Highway 64 over by Ingersoll. The dirt was blowing so bad. 2 days we had last week. And our no-till doesn't wash as bad, dirt's not blowing off of it. We cleaned up 120 some acre ground there it was blowing because we wanted it clean to plant alfalfa on. But the rest of it's still left in the stubble or the straw, and it's not blowing. You don't have to work as much. I haven't really used a tractor till I worked that 20 some acres up the other day. Ran a tractor, the don't burn near the fuel, but no-till farming isn't cheap. It's expensive for your chemicals and spray. Several neighbors have bought their own spray rigs, but it isn't the price per acre of doing it. It's mainly the chemicals, and I think you do have to put on a little more fertilizer to offset the residue and everything. And the boy went to several of these OSU plots and things where they dig down 4 or 5 feet deep, and your earthworms are more, and the soil's just more mellow. A lot of these people up in Burlington especially are still using anhydrous ammonia, and the gas, and that seems to dry the ground out more, and I think will kill the earthworms. Or this seems like where you would get stuck before, the ground's more mellow, but yet it soaks the water in better.
What about the cost of equipment?
You don't have any equipment hardly anymore. Tractor, and wheat grill, if you cut your own combine truck or so. Before you used to have to buy plow shears or disc blades or more bearings. It kind of offsets, I don't know.
But you pay for it in the fertilizer and the things that they're using.
Yeah, it's different ball of wax, you might say. I kind of miss maybe going out there and running a tractor some, but then on the other hand, you have time to do other things, which I should be building some fence. And now with our things we got right now is pipelines all over the country. I don't know how. I hope they got all those mapped out, because we're getting, in fact, they're supposed to give me a check today, I think, for a pipeline. They pay by the rod, pipelines, and high lines. All of them's got maybe high lines on both sides of the road now. Meant to say on that back there in 1918, which is still at the farm, I have an old Delco Remy generator with a single motor on it out of Hutchinson, Kansas, that they furnish electricity with. had the light switches were push buttons with a brass deal around it, the old house. I think they had somebody come down from Wichita and put the wiring in for that. Had their wind charger, generator. I think they made those out of some old Dodge starter generator was combined with Dad's 1915 Dodge car. Had a big old starter generator on it, run off the timing gears or timing chain up front. And they took those and carved out their own propellers, put up their own tower, had acetylene welder, and welded that tower up out of brass rods to steel. That gas line was put in there. I don't know whether they didn't have any arc welders, electric welders then, but it was all acetylene welded together, the pipe. And in the expansion joints, they had a piece over that and rubber seals on that every so often, which I dug up some of that pipe. They gave us the pipe, you give them $1 and you could have all the pipe back. And it's surprising how good that pipe was. They went from west of Cherokee on 5 Mile Road, put a tree into Carmen, and now west of Cherokee 1 mile feeds up to, I think it goes toward Burlington. Now they're still using it, but the rest of it got so many leaks on it, they took it out. After we moved to Cherokee in the 70s there, they took that gas line out.
When did they start drilling on your land?
Oh, actually, she's got a well up west of Burlington. And all the rest we have over here, they're on the neighbors.
Was it in your father's time, your grandfather's time, or has it only been recent?
Just recent.
It's
Just
recent.
recent?
Yes, recently.
Okay.
In fact, they're trying to get 2 more on me now, and I'm fighting it where they're wanting to put it. I think they put a map out and throw a dart. And well, we can put up cattle guard. And I tell them, like cattle guards, cow gets your foot caught, breaks a leg, or what have you. No, this is just in the last few years. We got a boom here.
It looks like it when you're driving in this area. So what have been some of the positives and negatives of this?
Well, there's more crime,
Okay.
more accidents up here on the highway. Semi-driver, I don't know what happened, he ran in, an old gentleman, 90 years old, sat in his living room, semi ran in and killed him. Every day you read maybe a truck turned over, wrecked, semi. They look at the Alva paper and everything, they help one of the ads. They can't hire any help because everybody's going to the oil field, begging for truck drivers. And the only place that's worse, I guess, is up here in the Dakotas.
You probably saw, just as you were coming out from Alva, that just in this mile, all of the mobile homes there.
Yep.
It's
East of
a man
Alva,
camp.
all that big tanks put up south of Cherokee, east of Alva, oil tanks, the trucks. The other day I counted 12 trucks in a row. These gravel trucks are graveling a lot of the country roads just to get to the well sites. It's just, I know a neighbor over here is getting, I know for a fact he's getting $300,000 a month up around Amarita. Big time. The old school janitor's served 20-some years in the military. He said his first check was worth more than his 20 years of his full 20 years in the Army. It's just a madhouse up here around Amarita and Burlington. Big wells.
Have you felt any earthquakes?
Not here. I remember one years and years ago, but they're mainly over here around Medford and Enid. And they're small, maybe 4 at the most. I don't know.
Have you noticed any changes? I think this part of Oklahoma is very special because of the salt plains and the environment. Have you noticed any changes with the environment with this rise in drilling?
traffic.
Do you see as many birds?
Birds? Oh, they're out here eating all this food like crazy.
There was a squirrel hanging on our bird feeder right before you came. This area right here is just full of squirrels, but they all seem to find our bird feeder. Drives the little dog nuts.
No, Alva's really built up. It's go south out there on 281. The oil people and
Well, on 64 that you came in, those 3 motels are all new,
yeah.
and you couldn't get a room there if you wanted it. On a weekend maybe, but otherwise they're all booked by the oil people.
Well, I don't even know if they opened the little one yet. The other two's, that's just,
The third one may not be
that's just
open
since the
yet,
oil well.
but she's already building another one.
Wow.
Because she told the mayor at least that she could pay for it in 4 years.
The one in Cherokee, the lady has it. She just leased it out by the year to Sandridge, whole thing. Yes.
Thinking about your farmland, how have your neighbors changed through the years?
Well, there's less of them. Used to be a farmhouse on every quarter, schoolhouse every 3 miles, and everybody had from 6 to 10 kids, or more or less, and they all gotten bigger, or either sold out or something. Used to be maybe you made your living on it 1 quarter or 2, and we don't have a lot. It's 880 acres that we own. Our boys own another 400 some, but and rent a little bit. But if you're not, a lot of these guys, they have from 3,000 to 4,000 acres around here. With the land itself, wasn't too long ago, we thought $1,000 an acre was expensive, and you got the minerals with it. Now you can't even buy the minerals, and the oil companies are even offering from $3,000 to $4,000 an acre just on the minerals. And to go way back, my granddad back in the 20s, I don't know whether he's scammed or what, but he sold half the minerals on 2 3/4 over there for $1 an acre. And I sold the highest lease some here a while back for $2,100, $2,150, I think, an acre. It's leased it and kept the minerals. And that's the difference. The price of land up in here now have gone maybe from $1,000 an acre to $3,000 to $4,000 an acre. In fact, we just bought an 80 over there and gave, what was it, over $2,000 an acre, and it's the roughest piece of ground I got. But it's next to me, and you get 2 people bidding on something.
One of those
they go
cases where
nuts.
just what's
But I wanted it
everything
because
that
I
adjoins you.
already owned 2/4 and 80 in that section, and where this farm is, so I just added another 80 to it. And the oil boom, or the oil money, I just wrote around a check for it anyway, so 60,000 or something. So I don't know.
Were you eyeing that particular piece of land because it touched up against land you already owned?
Well, I kind of wanted it years ago. I offered 120,000 for it for the whole quarter, and I gave twice that almost for an 80, and didn't get the minerals either. Well, not really. I really wanted to cross the street in section 1 that my cousins owned, because I owned it one time when I bought these aunt and cousins out. I owned there's 7 kids, and I owned 6/7 of it. And I probably would have got it, except one aunt gave her share to my uncle. So when I bought all this place and that 80, I had to do some swapping with my uncle to get him off the quarter, and he kicked the 80 next to him. Is how I got some of that land, and we just traded land.
Well, I thought your farm story is interesting because you actually went out and tried to purchase everything once again and bring it all back into the family. Is that correct? Was it hard dealing with your relatives, trying to get everything back to one owner?
Well, my dad started out buying his youngest sister out first, And some of the cousins there, they didn't want to exchange money to show on taxes, so I bought some land in Kansas. And then just switched that way. That land I've never seen it or anything else, don't even know where it is. But they had legals down and I bought that and they signed the papers for mine. And of course I had to make out a check to those people, I guess, which I said I'd never seen them.
Was it important for you to do this? What was motivating you to get it all into?
One time as a kid, I always said I wanted to own those 4 quarters that my granddad and his brothers homesteaded, but the one, his wife left him, Frank Bender, next to mine. His wife left him, and after he passed away, she sold it. My granddad, just everywhere in the world, tried to buy it, but she wouldn't sell it to him. So Sanders bought it, then my dad's uncle and aunt bought it over there, and then after on in the family here, my dad and my aunt inherited some, and I was able to buy some land, more of it. So like I say, where this farm is, I owned 1, 2, 3 quarters right there in that section. I don't know.
You've seen lots of changes through the years, and I'm sure it's even complicated now how you handle your bookkeeping. Do you have any idea of how it was handled during your father's time or your grandfather's time to today?
He kept everything.
He kept everything.
We had a safe out in the garage that was a safe that was there on the original farm. When his dad started the shop in Alva, then he moved it there, but we have it out here now. And,
nobody threw away anything. I got a barrel out there now that's got checks dated 1900. So many checks, $1.50, $2. Even the house had it on it. I think $1,800 worth of material to practically build that part of that house. Things, were so cheap, but yet when my great-granddad, there's file drawers in here. I can show you papers, all sides of the family, from one grandparent from Frankfurt on Main, the other from Bremerhaven. My own mother didn't even know English when she started school. She had 2 younger sisters buried over in Russia, Prussia. But I have file drawers. My sister, DAR, American Revolution Wars, one up there I know was in the Civil War and was taken prisoner and escaped. And I'm not sure, but Joe Bender, I think when he made the run, only had 1 leg. One of the brothers. I don't know, they were in the Chicago fire, my great-grandfather, and they both dug a deep hole and put their belongings in. And then some friend or neighbor come along and they uncovered some of that, put theirs in, and they didn't have enough dirt over the top of it, so they still lost everything. They worked for the Shetler Wagon Wheel Company, and I have some out here and saved some little trinkets that Peter Bender's supposed to have made. The Bender name was supposed to come from Germany. They put the steel band around the wagon wheel, the Bender. And Bender, you wouldn't think was too much German, but I have papers in here, there's thousands of Benders in Germany. My mother's name was Göringer, which is German, early German, Prussia, Russia. There was a lot of German people.
How did she meet your father?
She meet my father?
Mm-hmm.
Well, one of her brothers worked there for my granddad for a lot of years. And she went to school over there at Enterprise, 6 west of Cherokee some. Probably I don't know.
I expect they were going to the same school.
Well, they did go to the same school, grade school.
Mhm.
Although records in here that I have, I think my dad was already out of there when my mother's going there. 4 years difference.
How many brothers and sisters do you have?
A brother and sister's deceased and one sister living, younger sister. 4 of us.
Okay.
Was church a very important part of your upbringing?
It definitely was. My mother and father, she was really a Lutheran, and after she married my dad, joined the French church. My dad, like I said, was teetotaler. He claimed he never smoked a cigarette in his life or drank. I don't know, my granddad, I think, ended up being a diabetic, and I've heard, I never did talk or ask anybody about that, but I heard he always kept a jug with a cold water pumping on it out of the windmill, so I don't know.
I think he had severe arthritis too, and that might have been part of the reason for the wine in the cooler.
Well, I made a mistake out there when I buried 3 different storm shelters, caves, and I built a barn right over top of them. Didn't have it settled yet. Now my floor's sunk in there some. When it's settled. Yeah.
Well, through the years, what other structures have been added to the property? We talked about some of the early ones.
Well, in '81, I built a Butler building, and a couple of years ago, so I put up where this Goofy barn right near it, I put up a 40 by 80 open barn, machinery shed. And that one barn is still there from 1924. And the rest of all those stringers, things in the house, I tore down.
They're just 2 buildings. They show up in the picture of the house that are still there.
In
Not worth anything, but...
In section 1, there's still an old barn with the old woodwork and or board, and it was moved in there, I think, in 1912 or so.
A Butler building, what is?
That's just a brand name.
The name
like
is the
the
person
other
that's
building I
building
have
it.
is a Star building. It's just a galvanized or galvanized barn, but that's just the brand name. It's
Well, have you farmed? Has farming been your way of life, or did you have other employment?
I worked on the railroad a while and worked about 2 years at Boeing, and spent my 18 months overseas during the Korean War, and but it basically, ever since about 58 or so, I've been totally pretty well. Well, I guess we did run a shop in Alva. I had my military was mechanic anyway, and pretty well used to try to do all our own repairs and welding and everything, but too old for it anymore.
Well, in your adult life, after you came back from the war, did you ever live on the farm as an adult? Or did you always live in town?
Well, pretty well always lived in town.
Always lived in town.
Except, like I say, through the wheat drilling time, we stayed there.
Mm-hmm. So you weren't typically drawn to the farm because you grew up on a farm.
Yeah,
Did you help out once you were married on the farm?
Oh,
Well, once we were wanting to go on vacation, and so
did some field.
he
plowing.
started the plowing and put me on the tractor, and I'd go around, and every round I made, it was beginning to tilt a little bit more, and I was getting really worried about that, so I cut the field in half and made twice as many corners for him to have to work out, and he never asked me to do that.
The dust in the this is 930 case or 1030 case. I had 2 of them. Every round should put a mark over here. That's my round. And then you had a little mouse or
also,
something in the
yes,
furrow.
There was a little mouse running along in front of me, and I just couldn't run over that mouse. So I stopped the tractor and had to go through how do I get this started again? Stopped it, and about that time a hawk came down and swooped up that mouse and flew away with it. So that was wasted effort. I do not like farming. I drove a truck a few times too.
Yeah,
And,
Busted axle on that international right in the elevator.
not my thing to do. I
Little-
threw him off
little
the,
bales.
the bale wagon.
You ran over a few too. Pop up bail loader on a truck, you know. The old time ways. Yeah, now everything's done with hydraulic front end loaders, or you don't handle anything by hand much anymore. Then they had those automatic New Holland bail wagons. But yeah,
And how many kids do you have? 2 kids.
2 boys.
And did they help out on the farm when they were younger?
Oh yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. They ran a combine, a tractor. Yeah, quite good. The one boy, older boy, is managed a national fish hatchery. He was an Eagle Scout. And, he was on the park ranger Columbia River Basin. Then he got into several fish hatcheries buying, and they ran fish hatcheries. Jones Hole, Utah, up at Vernal, Utah, up there near Roosevelt. Snow deep, but yeah,
Yeah, he's in Saratoga, Wyoming.
good workers, good mechanics. At least the older one, he had his Toyota cars fixed up where he rock climbing with the cars, out there, Moab and everywhere.
And your other son is farming
He's
the
full-time
land?
farming.
As 4th generation?
He did live at west of Cherokee, half section there, and he just moved into Cherokee now.
You said Burlington.
Over-
I mean, you said Cherokee. You
Yeah, I
lived in
meant Burlington, 3 miles west of Burlington, on a half section there. And then he bought a house, about a year or so ago in Cherokee. My wife's.
But they have only a girl, so this is probably the end of Bender Farms.
The other boys, his wife has 2 boys, but they're,
When she brought the boys out, they got to ride the combine, and she was really excited about it because her father had grown up on a farm. But they won't be doing that, I'm sure.
Well, as a family, have you talked about what will happen to the farm in the future? Have you made those decisions looking into the next 100 years?
well, we have a trust account, and they will go to their boys, but if something happens to both of those, it'll probably just go to the
Same.
foundations or whatever. It'll all be resolved, I'm sure.
I turned my dad's farms over to them when he died, just skipped a generations. I don't think it made a great deal of difference in taxes, but it might.
In a perfect world, what would you like to see happen in the next 100 years to the farm? In a perfect world.
I think it's gonna be unperfect.
But you've worked so hard to put all the pieces back together. What would you like to happen?
I wish we did have some grandsons that maybe could take on or keep it in the family yet, but we don't. And we're not the only ones. I can name several of my neighbors over there, same deal. The McMurkers had four McMurker brothers had farms, and some of that's still in the family, but they won't have another generation because the only son there.
Curtis is,
Well, yes, but not by the McMurker
well,
name.
no, but
Yeah, but I don't know, probably always be sold. Somebody will farm it, have it.
It's a challenge facing a lot of our farm families.
If the Chinese don't take us over, or who all else.
I guess we're.
What are they calling it over there now?
always
Isaacs or something, yeah.
ISIS.
Oh, ISIS, yes.
always happy to take the money, but on the other hand, I can't believe that the fracking is doing the world any good. Who knows? There are more earthquakes and closer around here all the time. So
Yeah, if you told me.
I have to think that there's some kind of connection.
Told me 5 years ago what we have now, I've never believed it.
Have you worked much with your cooperative extension agent?
Nope.
Where do you go to for advice or to learn new farming techniques or?
Well, read all the farm magazines for a lot of things, and OSU has all kinds of test plots. Either Kenny Fields or McMurtry's out here, and they'll have their test plots over the soybeans or Milo, and the boys went to one here a while back on the Milo. Of course, you sometimes disagree with those OSU people. They bring their little 4-foot combine up here and cut their wheat field, and little 4-foot drill, and drill it every fall. And McMurtry over here, he's an OSU graduate. In fact, his mother and dad and grandfather on his wife's side, there were several of them OSU graduates there. And he is, and his nephew, they set him up in farming here recently and all this oil money, and told him, you got to go to college. Well, he lasted about 1 year, 1 semester, Northwestern, but he's still set up big, and his dad is a CPA, and he had a good business at Cherokee, but now he's got all Colorado Springs and Denver dentist, and he's just got a home in Arizona and everywhere else. Just a poor kid over there lost his mom and dad, and was one of your students, and he's a good accountant, but he's got money.
Is your mom or your grandma involved in home demonstration clubs?
Oh, I only knew one grandmother. Most all my grandparents were deceased before. Well, my granddad died in 33, another about 36. My mother's mother's the only grandmother I
Your mom
really knew.
do any quilting or?
She was in Eastern Star for a while. I don't know. It seemed like too busy on a lot of things. I don't know. People took you to join all the clubs, PEO, and you name everything else after you got out of school.
Are your kids involved with 4-H or FFA?
FFA, the younger boy was. The older boy was, like I said, Eagle Scout, so he did a lot of scouting.
He was also in
Sports.
the Student Conservation Association. He
Yeah.
had lots and lots of good opportunities come from that.
Yeah, he went to
Good training too. They
Yellowstone
went out,
summer, and down in New Mexico.
and they'd work on the trails out there, and every 10 days you would be the cook. You got to take a shower if you were the cook. That you stayed in camp and you could take a shower.
When he was in Yellowstone, they made a little swinging bridge of some kind across the river there. And he was the youngest and smallest, so he got to try the bridge out, I guess.
Probably the most daring too.
Would you do any type of conservation work on the farm? Any terracing or?
We probably built some terraces there in 1949. Of course, I put in, on this section 1, I put in a nice waterway and a few terraces there. ended up making one or two of them myself. Those first ones were in '49. They put them too close together for our newer machinery. You can't even turn around. Some of them now, they need about every other one taken out. And I remember that little ditches washed out, those hills on that, and it's definitely improved the farm. And a lot of that topsoil would be off if it wouldn't be terraced.
Has the farm ever seen tough times? You know, I think about the 1980s. You know, we spoke a little bit about the Great Depression.
Well, I'm sure all the dirty 30s there were tough times.
Was there ever a point where you thought you were going to lose the farm?
Not ourselves. I don't think. Well, I know in 2024 my dad bought one there in Section 10, and I think he's struggling then to make his payments, probably why he joined the National Guard. Yeah, the 80s, the oil boom hit here and went down, but some of those farms are bringing big money, we thought then, but nothing like it is now. But we didn't ever think we was going to lose anything. Pretty well kept machinery up and things. Of course now the last new tractor I bought was a 930 case in about 1965 or so. And I've owned a lot of tractors since then. One big 4-wheel drive, and I just bought 2 tractors here in the last year. They're used, but everything I've bought has been used. I've bought a new tractor since back in the 60s. You know, so there's combines and tractors now. We bought a McDonald's 35-foot draper header a year or so ago, made in Canada, and that's $77,000 this for the header. Bought a used combine, it's $118. Before we got our wheat cut that summer, shelled the engine out, brought it outside the block, $24,000 just to put an engine in it. Things are just so different. These combines and tractors are $300,000. Where that one tractor I bought new, I might have been $5,500. But you didn't have any cab or and dirt, heat. You know, times has changed. I wouldn't run one anymore without an air conditioner cab. I know that.
Well, on the farm today, what's a typical day like for you? Or are you just enjoying retirement?
Oh, I went out yesterday. I took a neighbor kid down there, Carmen, to drive her semi back for a seed wheat on it, and they were cutting Milo. Oh, I go out and maybe check the cattle water and ride my pickup around more than anything. I think I've not done a lot. Sit there, like I said.
This summer he's done more because of Todd's accident. But
Yeah, I checked the cattle and everything there quite a bit this summer, and we had to sell some because of dry conditions here. We ran out of hay and couldn't even buy hay hardly a year ago. But with the rain we've had now, the grass has been plentiful. And yeah, off of some hay, I mean, you only got 15 bales off a little patch, alfalfa. And the first cutting, I think we got 50-some bales where you only got 18, 20 bales last year, you know. But, and we wanted to plant more, but you know, the cattle problem, after his accident, he went ahead and sold about, I don't know, 25, 26 cows. Got one out there now with some foot rot, needs to be sold. We got all the calves. He's got some of them penned up, weaned them, need to work them, do the rest of them, but I don't know if I'm even going to help any. I told him to hire some help. They need to give them their shots and branded and what have you. Need to get them off the cows so the cows will do better instead of drinking, giving all their milk to the calves. I mean, calf gets 400 or 500 pounds. They need to be off the cow.
Do you have a family brand?
Yeah, it's BF. It's not registered, but it's what we're using. And these cousins on that other 180 after I got Bender Farms, and it's even in the historical building there in Oklahoma City. In that historical building, got their
The
name.
History Center.
And then after that, after I got that in the plaque in there signed by one of the governors, in '93, my cousins after 2000, they went ahead and put Bender Farms on everything. You can see on the map they had Bender Farms, and I tried to tell them, I guess they got it too, but that I had that first, but all girls.
Yeah,
And
they're
it's-
not, they all just.
Well, one boy. And they hadn't lived there. And, my uncle started farming in Colorado for another uncle. And they moved out there in '52, left that farm and everything abandoned there. I farmed at some farm time or two. And now it's all sold anyway, so that won't have that Bender Farms on all the abstract and elevator and everything. I don't know.
So today there's cattle, wheat,
Milo, low alfalfa. We used to grow a lot of barley, oats,
Soybeans sometimes.
canola, and so we have soybeans out on 2 quarters right now. Milo, it's good. 4 miles to town, and a semi 1,100 bushel on it, so you'd have the combine bin full before the truck would get back. About a 300 bushel bin on the combine. Neighbors over there had 2 John Deere combines. One of the latest is 6680 or so, and the other 9770 or something. 2 semis and a 1,000 bushel grain cart, and trucks couldn't keep up with the combines. Get 100 bushel Milo. I've never had that in my life before. Just ideal year. We had some up there quarter last year, made 80 some. That was really good as dry as it was. But just had the rains the right time though. Wouldn't have believed it. I out of John Deere, and they said somebody had a whole quarter made 110 bushel on Milo, which something needed to make up because we didn't have a wheat crop this year. Very, very little wheat. I got seed wheat maybe. I don't know how people's going to buy their cattle this winter. 700-pound steer or so might bring $1,500 now. So if your meat is high, cattle is high. Yeah, back there in the 30s, you know, the government came out and gave you $5 for your cow and shooter or something, you know. One of my uncles told me he was herding cows on the side of the road ditch. And the federal people pulled up there and wanted to shoot his cows, give you $5 for them. He said, "You better shoot me first."
Has crop insurance had an impact on y'all?
Oh, you better believe it. That's the only thing we made any money this on. But it ain't cheap either. But years ago, a lot of years, we didn't even take it. Probably the first time I collected it when I completely hailed out. And the last time or 2 here has been the dry weather, the drought. And things are changing. We won't get any of your government payments, I think. They probably said, well, close the farm service agencies. You still have to go in and report your crops, turn it into crop insurance. And of course, the thing when they send you a check, they take the premium out before you get your money anyway, but it isn't cheap, probably gonna get higher. I don't know what yeah, all these people, that's all they depend on is raising something, and some of them, that's all, you got a neighbor or two over there on some school land, they hadn't farmed very good, and I think that's all they've been living on is their insurance off of it. I don't know what you're supposed to do.
Well, what have we missed? Anything else you want to tell us?
I don't know. You
Is-
didn't look at those.
Is there a family plot for grandparents and great grandparents are buried here in the county?
My parents were buried up here in the Alva Cemetery. My great grandparents and great grandparents and grandparents are in Cherokee Cemetery.
And they were moved
And my great grandparents off Section 1 moved over there.
into the cemetery later.
Yeah.
His dad told the story of going to dig them up and I guess looking to make sure that that was who it was. And that, I think he said the bodies were still
One
relevant.
wooden casket had fell in, but the other was
Mhm.
good. And I didn't know it, but my dad's younger sister, Shirley Bender, born in 97, I said something, a bunch of my cousins, they didn't even know. Only reason I found out, because I found a little tombstone out there at the farm. She might have just been buried on the farm. And so then I inquired about it. My dad said that was his sister born before he was, within 2 days. But, and W.J. Bender and Frank Bender was the only two that had any children. And his wife went back, Frank Bender's wife went back to Greensburg, Kansas, and had Edward Bender, and didn't have any contact with, my dad didn't have any contact with his first cousin there for probably from whenever he was born, both of them at 1898, 1905 or something, until up in probably the 60s. Divorced. And just that far away, didn't even know they existed, I guess.
Well, what's your favorite time on the farm? Season-wise or time of day, or what your favorite time?
Oh, spring and fall would be the favorites. Snow got awful deep around there a time or two. Back in 71, I had that 24-inch snow here with a 70-mile-an-hour wind. And the only way they closed school up here for 2 weeks or more is just pass. Shelves were cleaned out on the grocery stores. The only way you got around there for a while was on a tractor. And I drove a tractor, Cherokee Open Camp tractor. That was started that snow on Friday and didn't get out of the house till Monday. We had some snows a time or two. Your dad had cattle west of Burlington there, had probably 60 head or so of his own, and electric fences and things. The cattle he had ended up having over 200 head in this trail he was feeding. And by Wednesday, he and I went out there and sorted all the neighbors' cattle out of his, told his neighbors to come get them cattle. He wasn't going to feed them anymore. So that's, when you walk around in manure this deep. I was younger.
So when you want a steak, you go get a fresh one?
We really haven't fed out a calf and butchered. Now the boy did this winter. In fact, we got all his hamburger out here in his freezer because he didn't have room for it. But we really haven't butchered one.
I don't like to cook that much.
We used to have some good steaks. But
Well, good memories. We appreciate you sharing a little bit about your family and telling us about Bender Farms. Thank you so much.
thank you.